What's up, everyone? Today we're back and we're in the boat shop. We're going to talk about the BFL Regional recap from Lake Eufaula in Alabama. I've been to Alabama a bunch of times fishing, but I've never been that far south, and I've never fished Lake Eufaula. It was a very different lake. There's a lot of vegetation, a lot of ledges. There was a lot of brush piles. It's really known for the brush pile fishing. I kind of went there with the mindset that I was gonna try and find some brush piles to fish, some of the deeper brush piles, and hopefully there would still be some fish in those deeper areas. And then my backup plan was going to be find some vegetation. I didn't know if I would be punching it or if I was gonna be throwing a frog or a swim jig or what, but I planned on finding some vegetation, so I'd have a shallow plan and I'd have a deep plan. Ended up showing up there Saturday evening and went out for 3 or 4 hours. I actually just launched there at Lake Point, right where we're taking off from. So when I ran up the creek, I ended up fishing some channel swings. It was kind of a creek that had a lot of flats with a winding creek, and you had to basically stay in that creek in order to run. But I found a few areas where the creek actually ran up against the bank and made a deeper bank. I was fishing those channel swings, and it was almost like it made like a cut bank into those banks from, I don't know if it was from current over the years or what, but those deeper banks were like, I actually would have my boat almost on the bank and be sitting in 15 to 20 foot of water. It was kind of crazy. But those fish would be sitting right up on top, almost at the surface, and you'd flip your bait into that cut bank and they'd come up and hit it basically when it hit the water. But I found 4 or 5 little areas like that were close to takeoff, and none of the fish were really big, but I thought maybe I could catch, 14, 15 inchers and maybe even 2.5 pounders. And that I had that as a backup plan. So I was really excited about that. I went into day 2 of practice, or the first full day for me, kind of looking for some of those bigger fish, knowing that I had a backup plan, that I felt like I had a lot of confidence in that backup plan to where I could catch a limit if I needed to. I launched down by the dam, planning on targeting some of those deeper drops, the points at the mouths of the coves that I thought maybe some of those fish would be transitioning back into those creeks. It was really slow. So I don't know if the fish on the main lake were just small, or if I wasn't looking deep enough or what. But it seemed like any of the brush piles that I fished on the main river or the main lake, they just had spotted bass, or they had small largemouth. And you could catch maybe a few keeper spotted bass here or there, but they weren't going to do you any good in the tournament. And same way with the largemouth. If you caught one, it probably wasn't even a keeper. So I started going into these cuts. In one of the first cuts that I went to, I found a big brush pile that somebody had put by their dock so that they could fish around it and catch bluegill or crappie or whatever they were trying to catch. I saw it on my live scope as I was going down the bank, and I flipped over there, and it looked like there was 1 or 2 swimming around in there or whatever. I flipped my tube up there and ended up catching one that it had a head on it. It was probably like 7 pounds, but it ended up only weighing like 5.18 pounds, so like 5 1/4. A crazy story is I caught that fish on Sunday. My co-angler actually caught the exact same fish on Friday. So if you want to see that and kind of watch that story unfold, check out my search video for the practice catch, and then the game day video for day 2 for the watching my co-angler catch that fish on day 2. It was, I was surprised. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that big of a fish would bite that soon after already being caught. Anyway, started looking for brush piles, and I did a lot of that by looking on side imaging. And another good thing that I noticed was a lot of the docks that had like rod holders, or they'd have like a lot of lawn chairs where you could tell that they were sitting out there fishing, or even some of them would have fishing poles just sitting on their dock. A lot of those docks were the ones that had a brush pile or 2, or some of them had like brush piles the size of their docks. And I also noticed that a lot of these shorter pockets were the ones, so like on the Alabama side of Eufaula, a lot of the shorter pockets were the ones that had these brush piles. I don't know if those people were just more apt to put brush piles out for fishing or what, but those were the ones I targeted. Like I said, I fished a lot of stuff on the main river, and never ended up really getting on anything that was worthwhile. So the game plan going into the tournament was just to target those shorter pockets on the Alabama side of the lake and fish as many brush piles as I could throughout the day, and hopefully end up catching some bigger fish and end up with 5. The Wednesday of practice, we had 1.5 inches of rain, and it didn't really muddy the water up, but I don't know if it cooled the water off or what, but I feel like it kind of messed up that bite. I really don't know why it would have messed up that bite. It just seemed like that deal was fading or done, and I really still don't know what exactly happened. But so to catch those fish in the brush piles I was fishing, I was either flipping a tube or a Zoom Old Monster. Basically, I would just slowly pull over each limb, and a lot of those fish would hit it whenever the bait was on the way down. On the first day of the tournament, it actually got really windy. Wind was blowing about 15 to 20 out of the east, and it was really hammering some of the areas that I was fishing. So I ended up picking up a spinnerbait also, and I was able to generate a few more bites with that spinnerbait because it was so windy that day. So break down some of the setups I was using. I was basically using a Lew's high-speed custom light reel. It was 8-3-1, and I was also using a 7-foot medium heavy Magnum bass rod. I use that for my tube and my Zoom Old Monster, and I also actually use that for my my spinnerbait. A lot of the times whenever I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce or bigger of a spinnerbait, I like a little stiffer rod in order to really drive the hook home. Some of the smaller spinnerbaits I throw around the Ohio River and stuff, I'll use a little bit of a lighter rod, but I like that 7-foot medium heavy for my 1/2 ounce or bigger spinnerbaits. So basically, those were the rods and reels I used for all my setups. I used the same rod and reel. But for the tube, I put that on a 5/16 ounce Texas rig, and I pegged the sinker and used a 3/0 Trocar tube hook. And as you can see, I also dyed the tails with this JJ Magic. I think if you add a little bit of color to the tails like that, sometimes it gets their attention, and sometimes it'll get you a couple extra bites, especially when you're fishing around spotted bass or smallmouth or something like that. For the Zoom Old Monster, I was just throwing that on a 5/0 off shank round bend hook, and I pretty much throw all my 10-inch worms on that hook, and I was throwing it with a 3/8 ounce sinker that I also pegged. And I think pegging it allows the bait to go where you want it to in that brush pile, and you don't get hung up like halfway up the brush pile. It actually goes all the way down to where you need it to be. As far as the spinnerbait, I was throwing a 1/2 ounce Accent Blue Glimmer spinnerbait. You can see I put a Zoom grub trailer on the back of there. It's also in Blue Glimmer. Every one of these setups I was throwing with 15-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon. First day I didn't have a limit. I had 4 fish. I caught one great big one, and I ended up running back up to those fish that I had found up past takeoff, thinking that I could catch a 5th fish and I would be able to possibly catch a limit, and they just weren't there. I caught one that was like 10 inches long and never even got another bite. So I was really surprised about that, but you just never know what'll happen. I mean, you got 4 days of practice or whatever for those regionals, and things change overnight. But like I was saying, day 2, my co-angler actually caught the same fish that I caught on the second day of practice, and I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, obviously I would have wanted to catch the fish instead, but being able to see that and see the same fish and see the hook mark in its mouth and all the markings on the fish were the same. It was just a really cool experience, and I was happy my co-angler was able to catch that fish. Like I said, tournament didn't go as well as we wanted it to, but there's always next year. I appreciate you guys following along throughout the year for the BFLs, and be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out a bunch, and we'll see you guys next time.